Okay, recording has started. Right, a few intros first. So good morning, and whether you are watching live or as a recording, very warm welcome to this morning's Open Digital Planning Show and Tell. My name is Sarah and I'm a Senior Delivery Manager at the Department for Levelling Up Housing Communities. We do usually have councils hosting this, but today it is my turn. I work closely on ODP and within the planning software team at DLUG. So if you haven't joined before, if it's been a while, ODP is working to help both applicants and planning officers make and process planning applications more easily. Today, we will be mainly running through updates about BOPS. So we usually cover lots of things across ODP, but today the agenda is BOPS focused. So BOPS is creating a 21st century system for councils to process planning applications designed by and for planning officers to enable more efficient decision making and open up planning data. For anyone not aware, ODP is a collaboration between our partner councils and the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities. Development and design of the services is led by Unboxed and Open Systems Labs, along with others, including Mensa, who we sometimes hear from. I don't know if we're hearing from them today. So I will move across to the agenda slide. As I mentioned, today is a short and sweet agenda focused on BOPS, but it will be just as wonderful and just as interesting. I won't run through every line there. Instead, I will pass straight over to Ed and Ben, who are going to kick us off.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining. I'll just share my screen as I'm going to be giving a live demo of our neighbour selection. So as part of the project, we've been looking at publicity and the need to send neighbour letters, and this is looking at prior approval. So from the application landing page, we have a clear section that shows where our publicity is done. So from there, we can just click on send letters to neighbours. As part of this, we've created a screen when you land into selecting neighbours with clear instructions on how to select the neighbours you want to send letters to. You might have seen our previous version of this where we had two maps on this screen, one for the red boundary outline and one showing the polygon for the neighbour selection. This has now been merged into one with the red outline for the site shown in red, and then we can select neighbours by drawing a polygon around the buildings that we want to include. So you can see there that then adds an extra polygon onto our existing map, so we can clearly see in relation to our site the addresses that have been selected for neighbour consultation. If we do draw this and we think that's not quite right, we want to add an additional property, we have a reset button so we can clear and start drawing polygon again. So we might say, actually, we want to include property across the road. This, and it would then select the additional properties. So we can see once we've drawn our polygon, we can see the area, and it also gives us a list of those addresses and gives us the choice to edit. So in this instance, I know that 9 Garrett's Way is actually the application site. I don't want to send them a letter, so I'm going to remove that. Once we're happy with that list, we can select Add to Neighbours, and this then drops our neighbours into our selected, ready to send our letter to. Additionally, if we did decide we wanted to add an additional neighbour, we can do that by typing here, and this is all connected to OS places, so it's pulling the data straight from there. And as we start typing, I'm sure we'll have seen some of these sort of features. Can't remember the original address now. You've seen some of these features on websites that you've been using, and it begins to recognize the address that you're typing and make suggestions as you're typing it, so it will begin to narrow it into there. And we can see we've got 8 Garrett's Way, High Wycombe. We can select that and add that as an individual neighbour additional to the polygon retrieval that we've done. Again, we can edit these addresses and remove them if we want to. After doing that, we get a chance to check and edit the letter template, so we can see what will be sent in the body of that letter to the neighbours. So like here, we haven't got any sizes, so we might want to put that it's going to be 6 meters with 2.4 meter eave height. Oh, sorry, got that the wrong way around, but you can see you can edit that before sending them. You then get the option to save this and come back later. So if your process it wants you to save this and double check by the planning officer if your tech team are populating these addresses, you have that ability to save, so there can be a review of that before sending. Otherwise, it's print and send, and this is connected to GovNotify, and the letters are sent from there, and there's a record of those letters kept. I think that's about it for me. So whether we've got any questions, and if we haven't, I'll hand over to Stephen.
We have one question from Jenna in the chat asking, will there be development to select the properties on a map individually as opposed to drawing a polygon retrieval?
I don't think we've got it, but I will make a note and we can put it into our list of development for the future.
Lovely, thank you. And we have a question from David. What does BOPS stand for, please?
It's Back Office Planning System.
And then we have Christian with a hand raised.
The letters that go out, are they letterhead letters?
Yes, so each of the letters is customized to the authority that it's coming from. So it will include things like the logo, contact details, addresses. So it's topped and tailed. So on this, you actually see the body of the letter without the top and the tail on it.
And you mentioned GovNotify is the sending mechanism. That's for the mass emails, is it?
That's for the letters and the emails. So all of that communication is done through Notify.
Thank you.
Lovely. And then we also have a question from Eva.
Hi, yes. Just a question on, in terms of the description bit where you could add in the, you can't hear me, can you? Can you hear me now? Yeah. In terms of the description, where you're adding in the dimensions, I'm assuming we would be able to amend those letters if that's not in there, because we include that in our actual description of the proposal when it goes out in the actual, we have the address and we have a description of the proposal, but you was that like a sentence within the letter that you'd have to fill in?
Yeah, so I get what you mean. So with the integration between PlanX and BOPS, we're working towards a digital environment. So the dimensions are actually part of the application that come through, and they are populated into BOPS in a separate area. On this case that I've got, they weren't entered, so we didn't see anything pull through. But if the case had come through from PlanX, it would auto-populate those dimensions as put on the application form, which would then pull into this template. So this is sort of part of the ethos of BOPS, where we're trying to move from manual intervention to digital, and actually keeping that data in a digital format so that things like the letters would automatically populate with the sizes from that application form.
All right. Okay, so it wouldn't be included in the description. It would only come out in that particular sentence within that letter.
So for the description, it can include anything you want it to. So it's not to say that you wouldn't be able to put the dimensions into the description, but for the letter, it would actually pull that from the data stored within the system.
And that would only be from the application form. But I suppose if you were vetting it, you would see if there was a. Oh, okay, yeah, it's just something that we do, because if there's a discrepancy, you're taking it from the form, not from the drawings, because we often have discrepancies between the two.
Yeah,
from
so
the drawing and the form.
Yeah, the expectation would be that discrepancy check would be done at validation, and if the application form isn't correct, then it would be an invalid application, and we'd need another form of submission. But those dimensions can be changed within BOPS as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll have a couple more questions before we move on. So we have John asking in the chat, will the letters go into our DMS?
I can't remember. Ben, do you know if they're stored as separate letters or are they all stored within Notify?
Hey, it's Celia from Unbox here, a developer. We currently don't have any integrations with DMS, and we're kind of thinking we probably won't for now, and there'll just be a copy of the letter in BOPS. But yeah, Notify also holds a record of them.
Great, thank you for jumping in there. And the next question is from Rich. Will there be an option to use a buffer polygon for selecting neighbours? For example, on major applications, every neighbour within 50 metres needs to be consulted.
So at the moment, the version that we're looking at here is for prior approval only, but we will be, we are at the moment speccing out for minor applications and looking at the future and future developments. So it's definitely something that we can take into account, the use of buffers.
Brilliant, thank you. I think that's all the questions we have for now, so let's move on. Thanks all.
Hi everyone, I'm Stephen Barnes and I'm a senior planner at Lambeth Council. I'm part of the ODP project as a product owner for BOPS for Lambeth, and I'm just going to be sort of picking up where Ed's left off here. So I'll share my screen. Okay. So we're sort of where Ed has left off. It's imagining the next step where the letters have been sent out. So we've got this nice confirmation here. And the challenge that we're looking at is how to get neighbour responses and comments like objections straight into the back office system. So for our MVP at prior approval, we receive comments by email and then they'd have to be sort of manually pasted into BOPS so that they're all available for the officer to see in there. So we are working on householder applications at the moment, but today the examples are another prior approval. So we have to suspend disbelief for now. So the letter which we've been talking about here will contain a link, which would be to a proper gov.uk subdomain for whichever council is involved. And the link takes us to a sort of portal, which is a very simple page to sort of let neighbours inspect the application. So on here, we've got the address, we've got very clear indication of the site and the red line, and then you'd be able to see where you are in relation to that as well. As an adjoining neighbour. We can also see the description of development, which is again being pulled through from whatever's down in the back office. And we can look at the documents and open them up individually to have a look at what's going on as a neighbour. And down here, we can see redacted comments. So we can see there's been some objections and some other comments. But as a neighbour, I'm not really sure that these have covered what I want to say. So now I'm going to try and make a comment myself as a neighbour to this site. So to do that, I'm coming from the letter to this URL, and then it's up here to comment on this application. I can just click through here. And now this is the landing page. So we've included lots of comment here about what's material planning considerations and what might not be relevant to a case officer or have any impact on a decision, which is just sort of helpful information for neighbours, but we'll have to sort of test this with neighbours and see what is useful or whether this is just too overwhelming maybe. And then an explanation of what happens next and also the decision, expected decision date. So lots of useful information here. We just start now in this very gov.uk style. So I'm going to be Darren Jones today, ej.example.com. You don't have to include an email here as it stands. And again, this is linking to validated address details, basically. So we'll always know that it was an accurate address if it's been entered into here. We wouldn't have any messy data, which might affect how things show up on a map or something like that. And the next step is, how do you feel about the proposed work? So putting into plain English here, like, what's your stance on the planning application? Is it an objection? So I don't support the application. is it a neutral comment or is it supportive? And this is categorizing it in the background. This is categorizing your comment so that as an officer, you'll be able to sort of get quick insights from it, which we'll see a bit more of later. So for this example, I'm doing an objection. Now it's asking me about what is my objection about, really. So we've got design, size, and height. So if we click on that, we can see there's a bit of a prompt here about, well, we can't take into account a loss of a view, or if we were looking at natural light, we'd be talking about, please tell us as much information as possible. So which areas of your building are going to be affected? Is it your garden? Is it your bathroom? That kind of thing, which is sort of prompting the neighbour to make a useful comment, really. So for this, I'm just going to put in a sort of classic example of somebody responding to a prior approval for a householder, which is concerned about how this is going to look from my garden next door. And I'm also including some personal information in here, which we'll deal with in the back office. And it's as simple as that, really. You can also add files. So if you want to add marked up plans or photographs of your site, you don't have to email a case officer or the planning team directly anymore. You could just do that as part of this submission. We can just, for example, do this here. And then as a neighbour, that's kind of it. You get this nice confirmation that it's gone through. Again, this is what's going to happen next and when the decision's due. This is what it looks like from the back end. So as a planning officer, this is what you'll see. You'll see grouped comments. So you can see the supportive ones. We'll also highlight if it's an adjoining neighbour or not. So if they were included in that initial consultation, in this list of neighbours, it's going to highlight that fact to you. So you can sort of, it will help you take that into account and sort of bring attention to it. And then some of these comments also have these tags which relate to the option they selected when they were going through making their comment and saying what it's about. So if it was about design, it will come through as a design tagged comment. We have this comment that I've just made as Darren, and as a case officer, this won't appear on the portal straight away. So where we started from, if you remember that, we can see public comments here. It won't have updated to show Darren's comment yet because it hasn't been redacted by the case officer. So to do that, this isn't a perfect journey at the moment. It's something that we're working on, but just to show that the functionality is there. What we would do is have this redacted comment separately. So we keep a record of what was originally received, and then we can go through this and say, okay, we don't really want to identify that it's number 8 because that's the policy at our council. And as simple as that, we update the response. And now there will be a redacted version on here of Darren's comment. And that's pretty much where we're up to. As I say, there's lots of moving parts here to the consultation piece overall, and some of this is still getting refined and tested, but just wanted to show that off today and happy for any questions. If not, back to Sarah. Oh, sorry. It'll be Betty and Evangelos. Yeah, Imran?
Hello, sorry, who was on mute. Yeah, Imran here from product owner from Birmingham City Council. I just wanted to ask, is it worth having some guidance around, say, for example, someone wants to object about the light, on what guidance there might be for what light restrictions may be permitted, or are we allowing people to provide, to object on any old ground and just leave it down to them, even though it may not be a reasonable objection to amend the application or to not approve it?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a really simple implementation of that. We're trying to sort of help structure a comment, and then obviously if you have those insights about what what category that comment falls into, or which categories. We can just sort of see that at a glance as an officer. So that's the main point of what we're trying to do. You would just have to take into account everything that somebody's telling you. BOPS is mostly focused on meeting the user needs of a planning officer. So we're not, we're not going to be able to perfectly cover everything from a sort of neighbour and external person point of view.
Sure. I used to recall an incident where my dad's neighbour was making an application, and my dad just didn't want anything to be built there.
Yeah.
There was no grounds really for him to object, except it was obstructing his view.
I think we've got an other option, so you'd be able to do that. But yeah, we can't solve all of the problems, but we're trying to meet that need for people, mostly for planning officers, so that they don't have to copy and paste comments into the system, and that's what we're doing here.
Sure.
Yeah. Eva?
Off of mute. I was just wondering, in terms of that box where they enter the information, is there a limit on size? I mean, you could obviously enter it in as a separate document, I suppose. There's a way around it. But is there because we sometimes have some people who like to write quite a lot of stuff and it goes over our size limit on our thing, on what we can currently do. So I was just wondering, is there a limit to that box where they enter their comments?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I don't think there is a limit, but if anybody from the dev team knows a word limit.
There's currently no limit.
Okay, good.
There is
good,
no,
actually not good for the person reading it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there is no limit, but at least from the back office, as you can see in this screen, the text is truncated, so it won't cover the entire screen. You have the ability to view more if you want to see the entire comment.
Fabulous, thank you.
Could I just add something as well? I'm one of the designers at Unboxed as well, and we were just trying to strike a balance between giving some guidance to the person who's commenting, without creating so much friction that they just give up and attach a massive PDF of information. So because too much guidance, nobody will read it. So it's really useful to have these comments and try and strike that balance somewhere in the middle. So it's helpful to the planning officer, but also helpful to the person making the comment.
Thank you. Mark, do you have a question?
Yeah, so the person who's putting their objection in, we've got a text box. Something we've come across on Wirral is that people will type stuff in a word processor and then just cut and paste, which then has all sorts of hidden formatting. How does BOPS overcome that problem?
Hidden formatting in terms of?
So within Microsoft Word, for example, it's not just text on a screen. There are hidden characters which are to do with the formatting. So when you cut and paste that into a text box within a web browser, that can also include the hidden formatting, which can botch up the text interpreter within the web browser. So I'm wondering whether that's stripped out as part of the processing, or have you not come across that yet?
Yeah, thanks for that feedback. We hadn't actually heard that feedback from anyone yet, so we can give it a go and see what happens.
Sure, thank you.
And just in response to, sorry, there's another question which I was going to comment on anyway. We're going to be testing this with residents to see how they use it, and I see someone's just asked about that as well. So we will be getting feedback from people who have made comments on planning applications on this as well.
Great. We have one other question we'll come to in the chat, which is from John, saying we currently use Crystal reports to extract data on planning applications for performance management use, reporting to councillors, etc. How would we be able to access data held in BOPS? Thanks.
It'd be interesting to know more about this and how it works, but all of the point of BOPS is that it's kind of all of this data is going to be, available by API. Obviously, there's going to be sort of tiers to that and security things to consider. So it's not completely in public, but I believe this would all be accessible. Things like performance management dates, target dates, things like that. But would be interesting to hear more about what you're collecting, John, so we can learn about that. I don't know if anybody else has anything to add from Dev's side.
No, I think you covered that. Thank you.
Great. I'm conscious of time. I did claim that this is going to be a short and sweet one today, but we've got loads of great questions. So I think we'll move on. Are we going to Fede now for user research questions?
Sure. Let me just share my screen. Or actually, Stephen, would you like to show the previous design for check constraints, or?
Is it up there? No. This is what it looks like. Should be able to see this.
Yeah, cool. So hi everyone. I'm Fede, designer at Unboxed. So we previously had this particular task in check the constraints. We did receive some feedback. So we've now developed a better user experience in this area. So let me just share my screen and show you what we've got. Assuming you can see my screen. So this is in the early stages. This is just a prototype. So as you will see some placeholders, but hopefully you will get an understanding as to where we're going with this. So checking the constraints, you would have the details of the applications, and this is kind of reducing the labor of the planning officer, but also having that balance of giving control to the officer. So as you can see, the constraints are identified based on what you've seen from the from the map on the red line. It will identify the constraints for you. But it will also give you control to select the ones that apply or does not apply for this or is not relevant for this application. So you can uncheck if it is not. You have also the option to check all of the constraints and pull any constraints that you feel that if it's for the application. Again, this is just a placeholder, but as an example, if you want to add this constraint, you can check this one and it will populate in the list. And that's actually pretty much it. So you can save and mark as checked. So all of these constraints will be recorded. Any questions or?
Okay, it doesn't sound or look like we have any questions for now. You can ask at the end as well, but for now we will move on to, I think, Evangelos talking about constraints.
The part is covered by Fede.
Yeah, actually, that's the one you covered.
Sorry, I was reading from the agenda, it doesn't quite match up.
No
Okay, so that is the end of our agenda then. Are there any other questions from anyone or any of our presenters today? Last call.
I think Andrea put a question in the chat there.
Yeah, good morning.
Oh,
yeah, I'm Andrea. Yeah, I put the question in the chat. So if is there a way to automatically select the constraints are relevant according to the application type?
Sorry again, Andrea.
Yeah, sorry. If there is a way to automatically select the constraints that are relevant to the application type that has been selected.
Sure, maybe Evangelos can.
Yeah.
Right.
The constraints that we are getting there are the constraints that Planex is providing from us, that they are doing all the selectioning, and the applicant is going through and seeing that. So, I mean, I'm not sure if the constraint can be specific to a planning application. If can be, then it's something that we can get from further user research and feedback, and yeah, we can have a look at it, how we can.
Yeah, I think just to follow on from that, I think as part of our roadmap and product development, as we start moving into the minor and major applications, we will see the functionality around constraints and how they're identified per application type, and based on spatial data, we'll begin to see that grow as we move forward into the bigger application types.
Thank you.
Lovely. Okay, we have a question from David in the chat. Is BOPS a commercially available product? Who wants to take that one?
I can take it. We are heading towards it. So at the moment we're developing Householder, and we're beginning to map out and look at minor applications, which we will start to develop towards the tail end of this year, and late November, December, going into the new year. We do have Great Yarmouth Council, who are going to be an early adopter, working with Lawful Development Certificate, and that work is beginning this week. So the long-term plan is it will become commercially available, but at this point in time, we're trying to get the full end-to-end process for all application types. If there is interest in becoming an early adopter, then definitely get in touch with us and we can discuss it further and explain how and where we're going with the project.
And a question from Tom, will it remain an open source project too?
That's a question to which I do not have the answer at this moment in time. Yes, whilst we're developing and being funded by DLUC, the vision is that it will remain open source. But as for once we start getting into the depths of the commercial side, that might well change. But at this point in time, yes, it is viewed that it will remain open source.
Yeah, just to add to what Ed said there, I think we're going to be looking at the commercial strategy for BOPS. That's going to be a priority over the next couple of months, and how do we scale this up and make it available, and what the ownership looks like and these kind of things. So it's very much a live question. But thanks for the interest.
Lovely. Okay, I don't see any other questions for now. Last call for questions. Okay, a few people just mentioning in the chat that they are happy to be contacted for digging into some of these questions in more detail. That's fabulous. I think we will draw things to a close now. So thank you very much to our presenters today. Brilliant stuff being shared, and thank you very much to everybody for joining. Our next show and tell, please join, is on the 11th of October, so 4 weeks from today. Thanks so much for your time and have a wonderful rest of your days. Thank you.